The room was a cathedral of silence, built 80 floors above the mortal grid of the city. From this height, cars were metallic blood cells flowing through concrete arteries, and the people were an abstraction, a rumor of life too distant to feel real. Glass walls enclosed the space on 3 sides, holding the sky captive. Inside, the air was cold, tasting of purified oxygen and the faint, expensive scent of leather and steel. At the head of a monolithic black marble table sat Mr. Sterling, a man whose presence was less a personality and more a gravitational field, pulling all light and attention toward himself. The service door hissed open, a sound too subtle for most to notice, and Imani entered. She moved with an economy of motion that was its own form of grace. Her uniform was impeccably crisp: black trousers, a white button-down shirt, a simple black apron tied at her waist. Her name, Imani, was stitched in neat silver thread on a small black badge pinned over her heart. She carried a stack of heavy, cream-colored menu cards, their edges gilded, their weight signifying a meal that would cost more than her monthly rent. She began at the far end of the table, placing a menu at each setting. Her movements were fluid, precise, a quiet choreography learned through years of service. She was a function, not a person, a pair of hands ensuring the seamless comfort of men who moved markets with a single word. The men at the table, Sterling's lieutenants, were a collection of expensive suits and anxious eyes, their bodies angled towards their boss like plants seeking the sun. Opposite them sat the Mandarin-speaking delegation, 4 figures of immense stillness, their faces placid masks of observation. They watched everything. They watched Imani. As she reached the head of the table, Mr. Sterling was mid-gesticulation, his voice a low boom that filled the sterile air. He paused, not because he was finished speaking, but because her presence had momentarily interrupted his line of sight to one of his executives. He didn't look at her face. He looked at the space she occupied. "Just place the menus and step back," he said, the words clipped and dismissive. He waved a hand adorned with a heavy gold ring. "The important conversations are for the people at the table." The words weren't shouted. They weren't angry. They were worse. They were casual, an instruction given to an object, like telling a smart speaker to lower the volume. One of his executives chuckled, a dry, sycophantic sound. The Chinese delegates remained impassive, their dark eyes holding a deep, unreadable calm. Imani's hands did not falter. She placed the final menu card beside Sterling's polished water glass, its edge perfectly aligned with the silver coaster. For a fraction of a second, her fingers rested on the cool, heavy cardstock. The world seemed to slow. She could feel the subtle vibrations of the building, the thrum of the city 80 floors below, the collective heartbeat of the power held within those 4 glass walls. The insult landed not like a slap, but like a coating of ice, slowly encasing her. To be seen but not seen, to be present but erased. Would you endure this? To be treated as part of the furniture in a room you knew you could command if given a single chance? She drew her hand back, her expression a perfect mask of professional neutrality. There was no flicker of anger in her eyes, no tightening of her jaw. She had learned long ago that in rooms like this, her emotions were a currency she could not afford to spend. Her power was in her stillness, in the vast, unseen world she carried behind her calm facade. With the same quiet grace she had entered with, she took one step back, then another, until she stood against the wall near the service station, her hands clasped behind her back. She became exactly what he had told her to be, a silent figure at the edge of the room, a ghost in a crisp white shirt. But ghosts see everything. From her vantage point, she saw the subtle shift in the lead Chinese delegate's posture, the way his gaze lingered on Sterling for a moment too long. She saw the nervous tick in the junior executive's jaw. And she saw Sterling, oblivious, basking in the sound of his own voice, a king in a glass castle, utterly unaware of the cracks beginning to form in its foundation. He thought the important conversation was happening at the table. He was wrong. The most important conversation was the one no one could hear, the one taking place in the silent, observant mind of the woman he had just dismissed. Imani maintains her position against the wall, a study in professional stillness. The conversation at the table resumes, a low murmur of English and Mandarin. The luncheon is served by other staff members, a silent team that moves with the same practiced invisibility as a Manny. She is not required to serve the food, only to be present, a silent sentinel of hospitality, ready to anticipate a need before it is voiced. This is her role, to see and be unseen. Mr. Sterling, having re-established his dominance, leans back in his chair, a smug smile playing on his lips. He wants to bridge the tension from earlier, but his tools are blunt instruments of ego. He gestures vaguely toward the window, then back at the room. "It's all about intelligence, isn't it?" he says, directing his comment to Mr. Chen, the lead delegate. "Finding the smartest people, the ones with the highest operational IQ." He pauses for effect, letting his gaze sweep the room. It snags on a Manny standing by the wall. A cruel glint enters his eye. He sees a prop for his performance. "We should do an IQ test on the staff before we hire them, eh?" he says, forcing a booming laugh. "Make sure we're getting the best. No offense," he adds, waving a dismissive hand in a Manny's direction, though he never makes eye contact with her. The American executives at the table dutifully join in with sycophantic chuckles. It is a weak, hollow sound that fails to warm the frigid air of the boardroom. The Chinese delegation does not smile. Their faces remain serene, but a new layer of frost has settled in their eyes. They are assessing not just a business deal, but the character of the man they are dealing with. A man who punches down to feel tall. Imani feels the heat of the comment, a familiar, bitter warmth that spreads through her chest. It is the casual cruelty of it that always stings the most, the assumption that the uniform erases the person, that the service role implies a service-level intellect. She holds her posture, her spine straight, her chin level. Her gaze remains fixed on a point in the middle distance, a technique she perfected long ago to detach, to observe without absorbing the poison. Her mind, however, is a storm of activity. She is cataloging every detail, the way Sterling's comment caused the interpreter to shift his weight nervously. The way Mr. Chen's fingers, resting on his water glass, had momentarily tightened. The way Sterling's own daughter, Chloe, flinched at her father's words, her gaze darting to Imani with an expression of shared humiliation. The symbolic object of her role, the menu card, sits pristine at each place setting. It lists delicacies with lyrical names, pan-seared scallops with saffron risotto, filet mignon with truffle reduction. It is a document of luxury, a promise of a world she serves but does not inhabit. To them, it is an accessory to the meal. To her, it is a reminder of the vast, invisible line between their world and hers. Her private reaction is not anger, but a cold, clarifying focus. The condescension is a lubricant, stripping away any lingering deference she might have felt. It makes what she might have to do next not just possible, but necessary. The conversation steers back to the contract, the document that has brought these two worlds together. A junior lawyer from Sterling's side begins to summarize the key provisions, his voice slick with rehearsed confidence. He arrives at Clause 114, the section on liability and mutual protection. The interpreter, a man named Thompson who seemed more flustered by the minute, leans into his microphone. "And here," the lawyer says, "we have the standard clause on retroactive indemnity." Thompson clears his throat. He listens to the English, his brow furrowed in concentration. Then he begins to speak in Mandarin, his tone lacking the crisp authority of the delegates. Imani, whose fluency in Mandarin was a secret she kept like a jewel in a locked box, feels a jolt. The words he is using are wrong, terribly wrong. He is not translating retroactive indemnity, a defensive shield protecting both parties from unforeseen past liabilities. He is translating something closer to unilateral profit forfeiture upon review. He is turning a shield into a sword and handing the hilt to Sterling. A ripple of shock, subtle but unmistakable, passes through the Chinese delegation. Mr. Chen's face, once a placid lake, now has currents of ice moving beneath the surface. He holds up a hand, a gesture of quiet command that immediately silences the room. He speaks in Mandarin, his words sharp and precise, addressed to Thompson. "Nin quetting nin de fanny shi zhenk de ma, ji tio quan de han yi fi kong yanjiang." Are you certain your translation is correct? The implication of this clause is extremely serious. Thompson, sweating under the sudden pressure, doubles down on his error. He fumbles through a clumsy, defensive explanation, his Mandarin becoming more stilted as his confidence evaporates. He is now actively misrepresenting the legal framework, digging the hole deeper with every word. The deal, a $100 million partnership that had been in negotiation for 2 years, is now hanging by a single frayed thread. The air crackles with unspoken accusations. To the Chinese delegation, Sterling has just revealed himself to be a predator, sliding a poison pill into the contract at the 11th hour. To Sterling, who understands none of the Mandarin exchange, it looks like his partners are trying to renege. What the hell is going on? He barks, his face turning a blotchy red. What did he say? The room is now a tinderbox. The opportunity for a quiet correction has passed. The public error has been made, the offense has been given, and the consequences are about to be catastrophic. For a Manny, standing by the wall, the moment is a crucible. To remain silent now is to be complicit in the disaster. To speak is to shatter the invisible walls of her role, to invite consequences she cannot predict. The incident has locked her in. There is no way back. The chaos mounts. Sterling is now shouting at his own legal team, who are flipping through documents in a panic. Thompson, the interpreter, is stammering, trying to defend a position he doesn't fully understand. The entire $100 million deal is imploding in a cacophony of misunderstanding. Amid the noise, Imani acts. Her movements are small, almost imperceptible. She drifts from her post by the wall to the service station, a small credenza where extra napkins and pens are kept. No one pays her any mind. She's just a waitress, part of the background scenery. She picks up a heavy, silver ballpoint pen, the kind reserved for signing important checks. Its weight feels solid and real in her hand. She then picks up a spare menu card from the stack. On its back, a blank canvas of thick, cream-colored paper, she begins to write. Her hand moves with a speed and precision that is utterly at odds with her role. There is no hesitation. The characters flow from the pen, elegant, complex, and perfectly formed. Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Yuisu Xing Peichong, underneath the Mandarin. She writes the English term in neat, clear script, retroactive indemnity, a contractual provision protecting parties from liability for events that occurred before the contract was signed. She adds a final, crucial note, a single line that clarifies the entire conflict. Current translation implies asset forfeiture, not mutual protection. She completes the entire act in less than 10 seconds. It is a silent, surgical strike of pure competence, a quiet bomb of truth assembled while the men in charge are screaming. She places the pen down and holds the card in her hand, hidden from view against her leg. It is a small act of defiance, a preparation for a war no one knows she is qualified to fight. But someone does see. Chloe, Sterling's daughter, has been watching Imani, not the shouting men. She sees the fluid certainty in Imani's hand. She sees the confidence in the way she forms the characters. Chloe has spent her life observing details others miss, reading the silent language of gesture and expression. And in that moment, she sees something in the waitress that no one else in the room can, an immense hidden power. Her eyes, wide with a mixture of shock and awe, lock with Imani's across the room. It is the first small win, a secret alliance forged in a moment of shared clarity. Chloe feels the connection like a physical current. In her father's world of loud voices and grand pronouncements, she is often as invisible as Imani. Her deafness is not a disability to her, but a filter. It allows her to see the truth beneath the noise. She sees her father's blustering insecurity, the lawyer's panic, and now, the waitress's stunning, silent competence. She feels an immediate, fierce kinship. She knows she cannot speak up. Her father would dismiss her instantly. So she does what she has always done. She finds another way to communicate. She subtly angles her phone on the table, shielding it from her father's view with a water glass. Her thumbs fly across the screen, typing a message into a large font notes app. She holds it up just enough for Imani to see. The words on the screen are a simple, direct plea. They're getting it wrong, aren't they? Imani, still holding the corrected menu card, sees the message. Her heart aches for the girl, for the loneliness and perception it must have taken to see what was truly happening. In this room full of powerful men, her only ally is a 16-year-old girl who the world has taught to be silent. Imani meets Chloe's gaze. She gives a single, slow nod. It is almost imperceptible, but for Chloe, it is a massive validation. It's a confirmation that she is not crazy, that her perception is accurate. The exchange solidifies something in Imani. Her decision is no longer just about professional ethics or the abstract truth. It is now about the young woman across the room. It is about showing her that quiet does not mean powerless, that observation can be a weapon, and that one person, seeing the truth, has a moral obligation to act. She feels a surge of protectiveness, not just for the deal or for Mr. Chen, but for Chloe. She must act, not only to correct the error, but to honor the silent, desperate intelligence of the only other person in the room who truly sees. Imani's focus sharpens. With her new resolve, she replays the interpreter's words in her mind, analyzing them not just as a linguistic error, but as a legal maneuver. The more she considers it, the clearer it becomes. This isn't just a mistake. The specific Mandarin phrase Thompson used wasn't just a clumsy synonym. It was a precise, albeit obscure, legal term. It was a term one might find buried in a hostile takeover document, not a partnership agreement. Where would a mid-level interpreter even learn such a specific, predatory phrase? She listens more intently to the panicked crosstalk between Sterling's lawyers. They aren't arguing about the translation. They are arguing about Clause 114 itself. One of them, a younger associate, whispers frantically to his senior partner, "I told you the language was too aggressive. I told you it wouldn't fly." The senior partner shoots him a look that could freeze fire. "It was supposed to be ambiguous," he hisses back, "a leverage point for later. Thompson was just supposed to soften it, not spell it out." The truth lands on Imani with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't an accident. It was a deliberately planted trap. The English version was designed to be legally defensible but aggressive, while the plan was for the verbal Mandarin translation to be a softer, more palatable version. The company was trying to deceive its partners, to have two versions of the truth exist simultaneously, one on paper and one in the air. Thompson, in his incompetence, hadn't softened the language. He had accidentally translated the trap's true meaning. He had revealed the poison in the heart of the deal. The trap was not the translation had merely exposed it. Imani now holds the full, ugly picture in her mind. This is not a misunderstanding to be clarified. This is a deliberate act of bad faith. She is now faced with a far more dangerous choice. To stay silent is to allow a massive act of corporate fraud to proceed, potentially ruining Mr. Chen's company. To speak up is to accuse her employer not of a mistake, but of a crime. She would not be a helpful translator. She would be a whistleblower. The risk to her livelihood just became a risk to her safety. She stands in the crossfire, the only person who understands both the language of the lie and the language of the law. Taking a deep, steadying breath, Imani makes her move. She cannot let this happen. She spots Sterling's junior aide, a young man named Peterson, standing near the edge of the room, looking pale and useless. He seems the most approachable, the least steeped in the corporate rot. She moves toward him, keeping her steps measured and calm. "Excuse me," she says, her voice low but clear. "There's been a critical misunderstanding of the legal terms. I can clarify." Peterson looks at her, his eyes wide with panic. He sees her uniform, her name badge, not the expertise she's offering. To him, her intervention is just another layer of chaos he can't manage. "This doesn't concern you," he snaps, his voice cracking with stress. "Please just stay back." He turns his back on her, a clear, brutal dismissal. The rejection is a physical blow. She is offering the key, the one thing that can stop the bleeding, and he has swatted her away like an insect. Her attempt, however small, has been noticed. Mr. Sterling, his face a mask of pure fury, sees her talking to his aide. He has lost control of the room of the deal, and he needs a target for his rage. He finds one in the person with the least power. Someone get her out of here. He roars, pointing a trembling finger at Imani. I don't know what she's doing, but she's distracting my team. We're losing the deal. Out. A large security guard who had been standing discreetly by the door moves toward her. He is polite, his face apologetic, but his presence is an undeniable wall. Ma'am, you have to come with me, he says softly. He doesn't touch her. He doesn't have to. The humiliation is a physical force pushing her toward the door. Every eye in the room is on her as she is publicly exiled. The American executives look away, ashamed or relieved. The Chinese delegates watch her departure with a cool, analytical curiosity. Chloe looks devastated, her hands clenched in her lap. The heavy wooden door clicks shut behind her, muffling the sounds of the collapsing deal. Imani stands alone in the silent, opulent hallway. She looks down at the menu card still clutched in her hand. It feels flimsy now, a useless piece of paper. She has the truth in her hand, but she has been cast out, her voice silenced, her competence rendered worthless by the uniform she wears. This is the ultimate defeat, to have all the answers and to be utterly, completely powerless. If that happened to you, what would you do? She leans against the cool marble wall, the silence of the hallway a deafening roar. All seems lost. In the silent hallway, Imani doesn't panic, she doesn't despair. The humiliation crystallizes into a cold, hard resolve. For a full minute, she simply breathes, letting the adrenaline subside, allowing her mind to clear. She can still walk away. She can go back to the staff locker room, change out of her uniform, and disappear. No one would blame her. She did her job and she tried to do more. She was silenced. But then she thinks of Chloe's face, the desperate hope in her eyes. She thinks of Mr. Chen, a man of dignity, being swindled. And she thinks of Sterling, a man who believed her existence was an inconvenience. The thought of letting his arrogance win is intolerable. Her plan emerges, not from a place of anger, but from a place of absolute certainty. It is not a complex strategy. It is the simple, direct application of truth. She has one tool, the corrected menu card, and one weapon, her knowledge. She will not beg to be heard. She will command it. She watches the boardroom door through the small, rectangular window. She sees the final, grim handshakes. She sees Mr. Chen and his delegation rise from their seats, their faces set like stone. The deal is officially dead. They are leaving. This is the moment, the threshold. As the heavy door swings open, the security guard moves to block her path, a gentle but firm hand raised. Ma'am, I'm sorry, you can't go back in there. Imani meets his gaze. She doesn't argue or plead. She simply says, with a calm authority that makes him pause, I'm not asking for permission. She moves past him before he can react. It is not an aggressive push, but a fluid, unstoppable movement, like water flowing around a rock. She walks back into the boardroom, into the heart of the failure. The room is a tableau of defeat. Sterling is slumped in his chair, his face ashen. His lawyers are packing their briefcases with the funereal quiet of men who know they have lost. The Chinese delegates are already in the doorway, ready to depart. Imani walks directly past them, past the stunned face of Mr. Sterling, past the bewildered lawyers. She doesn't say a word. She proceeds to the head of the table, to where Mr. Chen had been sitting. With a deliberate, steady hand, she places the corrected menu card face up on the polished black marble, directly in his path. The room falls utterly silent. Every person stops what they are doing. Every eye is on the small, cream-colored card and the woman who placed it there. She has just turned the entire room into her stage. Mr. Chen stops at the threshold of the door, his departure arrested by Imani's audacious act. He turns, his gaze falling upon the menu card. He walks back to the table and peers down, his eyes narrowing to read the elegant, handwritten characters. A flicker of astonishment crosses his face. He looks up from the card, his eyes finding Imani's. The question in his expression is clear. Who are you? He speaks to her in rapid, formal Mandarin, a complex sentence laced with legal jargon, a clear test of her fluency and comprehension. Ji shi falu de jink jishi, nin shi kong nali za a dao da. This is the precise legal interpretation. Where did you learn this? Imani meets his gaze without blinking. She replies in the same formal, academic Mandarin, her tone calm and measured, the voice of a scholar, not a waitress. Woze yelu daxa faxa unju ziu guoji moe fa, ji shiwo de ju and I lingyu. I specialized in international trade law at Yale Law School. This was my area of focus. A collective gasp ripples through the room, literal goosebumps when she spoke. The American lawyers stare, their mouths agape. Thompson, the interpreter, looks like he might faint. Chloe, by the wall, is beaming, tears welling in her eyes. Imani turns her attention to the rest of the room, her voice switching to flawless, unaccented English. It is clear, steady, and carries the undeniable weight of authority. "Mr. Sterling," she begins, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. She picks up the menu card, holding it so all can see. "The term in your contract is retroactive indemnity. It is a standard defensive clause meant to protect both parties from unforeseen liabilities that predate the agreement. It builds trust." She pauses, letting the words sink in. "What your interpreter proposed," she continues, her gaze sweeping over Thompson, who visibly wilts, "was unilateral asset forfeiture. It is a predatory clause that implies one party has the right to seize the assets of the other based on a post facto review. It is an expression of profound bad faith." She places the card back on the table. "There is a significant legal and cultural difference. One invites a partnership, the other declares a war." Did you feel that shift? The power in the room has just tilted on its axis. It has flowed away from the billionaire at the head of the table and coalesced around the waitress standing in the center. Sterling is chalk white. He stares at Imani, his mind struggling to reconcile the woman he dismissed as furniture with the brilliant legal mind now dismantling his entire strategy. He opens his mouth, but no sound comes out. He is no longer the king of his glass castle. He is a trespasser in her courtroom. The consequences are about to land, and for the first time in his life, he is utterly unprepared. The immediate fallout is a deafening silence. The illusion of Sterling's authority has been shattered, replaced by the stark, undeniable fact of Imani's competence. Mr. Chen, his face a mixture of deep respect and shrewd reassessment, looks from Imani to Sterling. He speaks in English now, his voice cold as steel. "It seems we have a basis for a real conversation now. But not with you, Mr. Sterling. With her." The deal is back on the table, but the terms of engagement have fundamentally changed. Sterling, humbled and desperate, knows he has been saved from his own disastrous scheme. As the delegates retake their seats and begin a sidebar conversation with Imani, he approaches her, his entire demeanor changed. The boom is gone from his voice, the arrogance replaced by a raw, pleading fear. I don't know what to say," he stammers. "You saved us. Name your price. A bonus." "A check. I'll write you a check for $1 million right now. A vice president position. It's yours. Anything." This is the moment of reckoning, the offer of hush money, of a promotion to absorb her into the very system that had erased her. Revenge would be easy. She could destroy him, expose the deliberate fraud to the press, let the entire company burn. She could take the money and walk away, vindicated. But Imani doesn't look at him. She looks across the room at Chloe, who has been watching the entire exchange, her hands clasped tightly. She sees the hope in the young woman's eyes, the yearning for a world better than the one her father built. Imani's choice is not for herself. It is for the future. It is a choice of soft justice, of healing over retribution. She turns back to Sterling. "I don't want your money, Mr. Sterling," she says, her voice quiet but firm, "and I don't want a title in a company that operates this way." "Then what?" he asks, his voice barely a whisper. "What do you want?" "I want you to listen," she says. "I want you to understand that talent doesn't wear a uniform. That brilliance is being overlooked in every corner of your company because you and people like you don't know how to see. I don't want a personal reward. I want a systemic change. What does real justice look like here? Not a payout, not a punishment. It is the demand to fix the broken system, to ensure that no one else is ever silenced the way she was. She is not just saving a deal, she is trying to save the soul of a company." The stakeholders, Sterling, his lawyers, and even Mr. Chen, who has paused his conversation to listen, are now weighing her proposal, a request so much larger and more profound than they could have ever imagined. Imani lays out her terms with the same precision she used to define the legal clause. Her voice is calm, constructive, and leaves no room for negotiation on the core principle. Your company's philanthropic arm, the Sterling Foundation, is a PR tool. It funds galas and gets your name on buildings. That ends now, she states. You will redirect its entire annual budget to launch a new, permanent educational program. It will be called the Chloe Sterling Grant for Underrepresented Linguists. She glances at Chloe, who puts a hand to her chest, her eyes wide with shock and gratitude. This program, Imani continues, turning back to Sterling, will provide full scholarships and postgraduate certification for multilingual students from low-income and immigrant communities. Its sole purpose will be to train and place certified translators, interpreters, and cultural liaisons in corporate, legal, and diplomatic fields. It will create a pipeline of talent that your current system is blind to. She isn't finished. I will not run it. I will not work for you. I will, however, co-chair the Independent Selection Committee, alongside Mr. Chen or a delegate of his choosing and a representative from the Yale Law faculty. We will have final authority on candidate selection and curriculum. The program's charter will be made public, and its results will be audited annually by a third party. This is the specific, concrete change. She has named the program, its mission, its leadership structure, and its enforcement mechanism. She has designed a system that prevents not only the kind of mistake that happened today, but the culture of blindness that allowed it to happen. It directly addresses how to prevent repeat harm. Sterling is stunned into silence. This is not a request for a job. It's a demand for a legacy. It's a move that will cost him millions, but in a way that rebuilds his shattered reputation on a foundation of genuine integrity. It's a brilliant, non-confrontational checkmate. He knows he has no choice. To refuse would be to admit that his apology is meaningless. Yes, he says, his voice hoarse. All right, we'll do it. The change begins in that moment. It will be a long and difficult path. Resistance from the old guard is inevitable. But a new path has been carved not by a CEO or a board, but by a waitress who refused to be invisible. Would this change be enough in your workplace? For this room on this day, it was everything. Hours later, the storm has passed. The revised contracts are being drafted, the lawyers are murmuring in hushed, respectful tones, and the boardroom is slowly emptying. Imani, who had been consulting quietly with Mr. Chen's team, finally has a moment of peace. She stands by the vast window, looking down at the city lights beginning to sparkle in the twilight. She feels the deep exhaustion of a battle won, a quiet sense of rightness settling over her. She hears a soft footstep behind her and turns. It's Chloe. The young woman hesitates for a moment, then steps forward, her face a canvas of complex emotions, gratitude, admiration, relief. She doesn't speak. She doesn't have to. She raises her hands and her gestures are fluid, articulate, a silent poetry. I've never seen anyone do what you did today, she signs. My father, he listens to no one, but he listened to you. Imani smiles, a genuine, warm smile that reaches her eyes for the first time that day. It is in this quiet, personal exchange that her dignity feels most profoundly restored. It is not the applause of the powerful that heals, but the genuine recognition of a kindred spirit. She raises her own hands, her movements as fluent and natural as Chloe's. Your voice is powerful, Chloe, she signs back. You saw the truth before anyone else did. Never forget that. Chloe's eyes fill with tears, but she is smiling. How did you know? She signs, her curiosity overriding her emotion. There are many ways to be fluent, Imani replies, her hands moving with gentle grace, and many ways to be silenced. I learned both. This is the micro-closure, the shared understanding between the catalyst and the protagonist. In this silent conversation, Imani reclaims her own narrative. She is not just a lawyer or a waitress. She is a person of deep, layered experience, a woman whose skills were born from a life lived in the spaces between worlds. She is no longer defined by Sterling's dismissal, but by this quiet, powerful connection. The healing is not in the victory, but in being truly seen. As Imani and Chloe finish their silent conversation, Mr. Chen approaches them. He has been waiting patiently, allowing them their moment. He bypasses Sterling completely and addresses Amani directly, not as a savior or a hero, but as an equal. He bows his head slightly, a gesture of profound respect. "Miss Amani," he says, having made a point to learn her name. "My partners and I are in your debt, but more than that, we are in awe of your expertise." He does not gush. He does not offer flowery praise. His recognition is specific, technical, and focused entirely on her competence. "Your impromptu analysis of Clause 114 was more precise than the one provided by the legal firm we have on retainer in Shanghai. Your understanding of the cultural implications of legal language is something rarely seen, even at the highest levels." He gestures to one of his aides, who brings forward a tablet. "We have incorporated your corrections, but we would be honored if you would review the final draft as an independent consultant before we sign. Your perspective is invaluable." This is recognition done right. It is not a reward or a favor. It is a professional request from one expert to another. He is not patting her on the head for a job well done. He is inviting her to the table because her mind belongs there. Amani considers it for a moment. "I will," she says, "but my consultation fee will be a direct donation to the first scholarship recipient of the Chloe Sterling grant." She shares the credit, immediately redirecting her personal gain back into the systemic change she created. Mr. Chen smiles, a deep and genuine expression. "Of course," he says, "that is a worthy price." Her actions have not only earned her respect, they have opened a door for others like her. The path she has carved is not just for her to walk, but for the scholars who will follow, a generation of brilliant minds who, because of her, may never have to wear a uniform to be heard in a room like this. 6 months later, the boardroom on the 80th floor looks different. The monolithic black marble table is still there, but the art on the walls has changed. Gone are the abstract paintings celebrating corporate power. In their place are portraits of the inaugural class of the Chloe Sterling Grant for underrepresented linguists, 10 bright, hopeful faces from all over the world. The first official board meeting for the grant program is about to begin. Amani sits at the table, not as an employee, but as the co-chair of the committee. Chloe is beside her, serving as the official youth ambassador. Mr. Sterling sits at the far end, quieter, more observant than he has ever been. On the main wall, in a place of honor, hangs a simple, elegant black frame. Inside, under museum-quality glass, is not a painting or a photograph, but the cream-colored menu card from that fateful day. Preserved on its back are Amani's swift, elegant Mandarin characters and the clear, concise legal definitions she wrote in the midst of chaos. A new board member, a university dean, gestures to the frame. "That's a powerful statement piece, Mr. Sterling," she remarks. Sterling looks at the framed menu, a complex expression on his face. "It's not a statement piece," he says, his voice subdued. "It's our Constitution. It's a reminder that the most valuable assets in any room are the ones we're not trained to see. That menu used to represent service. Now it represents our core mission to look closer." The object's meaning has been utterly transformed. Did the object's meaning change for you too? It is no longer a symbol of her servitude, but a testament to her brilliance. It is the founding document of their new beginning, the quiet truth that rewrote the entire room. Amani looks at the card, at the permanent record of the moment her silent world found its voice. She feels no triumph, only a quiet readiness for the work that lies ahead. The final scene is not set in the sterile opulence of the 80th floor, but in the warm, bustling halls of a public library in a neighborhood far from the glittering skyscrapers. Sunlight streams through large windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The scent of old paper and fresh coffee hangs in the room. Amani stands at the front of a small classroom, a whiteboard behind her covered in Mandarin characters and American Sign Language diagrams. She is not lecturing. She is facilitating a conversation, her presence calm and encouraging. Her students are a vibrant mix of teenagers, the first pilot group for a community outreach program funded by the grant. Chloe is there, moving gracefully among the students, volunteering as an ASL interpreter for a young deaf boy who is struggling with the tonal sounds of Mandarin. She helps him feel the vibrations of the sounds on his throat, her smile patient and kind. She is no longer the silent girl in her father's shadow. She is a leader, a bridge between worlds. This is the tangible sign of continuity, the ripple effect of Imani's single act of courage. Imani watches her for a moment, a quiet pride in her eyes. She turns back to the class. Language is not just about words, she says, her voice gentle but firm. It's about seeing the world through someone else's eyes. It's the most powerful tool you will ever have. The camera slowly pans out, leaving the vibrant classroom, moving through the quiet library stacks, and finally resting on a window that looks out onto the sprawling city. The glass towers where the story began are visible in the distance, small and remote. The real power, the final image suggests, is not in those silent, sterile boardrooms, but here, in the noisy, messy, beautiful work of building connections. The story ends in stillness, on a feeling of quiet dignity and expansive hope. The room and the world has been changed. What unseen value lies dormant in the people you pass every day, waiting for just one person to finally see?